Section 33 of Essays on Art. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Essays on Art by Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. Translated by Samuel Gray Ward. Section 33. The Pictures of Philistratus, Part 10. 3. The Birth of Minerva. You here behold all the gods and goddesses assembled on Olympus. The nymphs of the rivers too have come. All look in amazement at the armed Pallas, who has just sprung from the head of Jupiter. Vulcan, who has ministered his aid, seems by his attitude to wish to gain the favour of the goddess, the hammer in his hand, glancing with rainbow colours. Jupiter sighs with pleasure, like one who has undertaken a great labour, for the sake of a great advantage. Proud of such a daughter, he regards her with attention. Juno too, free from jealousy, looks at her with kindness, as if she were her own child. Below, in the distance, the Athenians and Rhodians are represented on two high citadels, one on the mainland, the other on an island, bringing offerings to the newborn goddess. The rite of the Rhodians is imperfect, there being no fire, but the Athenians bring fire in order due. The smoke simmers as it rises, as if bearing upwards a sweet savour. On this account the goddess turns towards them, as deeming them the wisest. But Jupiter considers the Rhodians, that they were the first to recognize his daughter, and it is said he poured down a great cloud of gold over their houses and streets. This is why Plutus, descending from the clouds, hovers above these roofs, to indicate the precious material that he scatters. The birth of Bacchus. A broad cloud of fire hangs over the city of Thebes. Mighty thunders and lightnings surround the palace of Cadmus. Zeus has completed his fatal visit to Semele. She is destroyed, and Dionysus is born, out of the midst of the flames. A dark shadow bearing her likeness ascends towards heaven. The infant god springs forth from the fire, glittering like a star. He pales its glow. That beside him seems dull and dark. The flame divides in strange fashion and assumes the shape of a pleasant grotto. Round about it grows the ivy, with its clusters of berries. The vine springs willing from the earth, and twines around the thyrsus rod. Wonder not that it springs up among the flames, for it is the will of the god, that miracle should accompany each circumstance. Mark too where Pan, on the mountain summit of Citaron, pays devotion to Dionysus, dancing and leaping, the word everway on his lips. But Citaron, under a human shape, bodes impending misfortune. An ivory crown lies loosely on his head, as if about to fall. He will not wear the crown in honour of Dionysus, for wild Megara plants a pine tree close beside him, and a spring leaps out there, where the blood of Pentheus shall flow. The Birth of Hermes. On the summit of Olympus the rogue Hermes is born. The seasons receive him. You see them painted each in her proper beauty. They envelop him in swathes and swaddling clothes, strewed with the rarest flowers. The mother lies near upon a couch. But lo, he has secretly slipped out of his wrappings and trips gaily down Olympus. The mountain smiles on him for joy. The boy has already driven the white, golden-horned cows that he found feeding at the foot, the cows of Phoebus, into a cave. Phoebus posts away to Maia to complain of the theft. She looks at him in amazement and seems not to believe him. While this passes, Hermes slips in behind Phoebus. He jumps up softly and loosens Apollo's bow. But when Phoebus discovers the cunning little thief, his visage brightens. The expression of this transition from dissatisfaction to pleasure does great honour to the sagacity and ability of the artist. End of section 33. Recording by Florence. Section 34 of Essays on Art. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Essays on Art by Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. Translated by Samuel Gray Ward. Section 34. Hercules. That we may be able to get, in some sort, a general view of this wide subject, let us briefly premise that we take Hercules, the son of Alcmena, as sufficient for the artist's purposes, and that he need take no cognizance of the remaining mass of fable that has gathered about this name. Gods and godlike beings are perfect from their birth. Pallas springs forth all armed from Jupiter's head. Mercury plays the roguish thief before his mother perceives his absence. We must keep this remark in mind in order to prize rightly the following picture. Hercules in swaddling clothes, yet neither in cradle nor swaddling clothes, but freed from his swathes, as we saw Mercury just now. Hardly is Alcmena delivered through the craft of Calanthes, and the infant swathed after approved nurse fashion, when the deceived and implacable Juno lets loose, at the approach of midnight, 2 serpents upon the child. The mother springs in terror from the bed. The assistant women, after so many days' care and anxiety, horrified by this new cause of alarm, rush hither and thither in their helplessness. A wild uproar arises in the highly favored house. For anything they can do, the child must be destroyed, unless he can at once defend himself. Without delay he frees himself from the paralyzing wrappings, seizes the serpents with dexterous gripe, grasping them by the throat just under the head in order to strangle them. The struggling serpents draw him after them, and the battle is decided on the ground. The child is on his knees, for the wise artist will exhibit only the strength of the hands and arms. These are indeed of godlike force, but the knees of the newborn child have to be strengthened by time and nourishment, and here we see them bend as any infant would who should endeavor to stand upright. Hercules on the ground. The vital and muscular power of the monsters are giving way beneath the grasp of the childish hand. Their folds twine languidly on the pavement, their heads droop, showing a part of the sharp and poisonous teeth. Their crests fall, their eyes are shut, their scales lose their luster. The gold and purple that glittered amid their spiral movement is gone, and their yellow skin is marked with blood to indicate their perfect powerlessness. Alcmena, in her night dress, just as she sprang from her bed, stretches out her hands and screams. Then she becomes aware of the miracle and ceases from her screaming, but seems unwilling to believe her eyes. The ever-busy women would excuse themselves at each other's expense. The father, too, is aroused. Ignorant that hostile violence threatens his house, he calls together his trusty Thebans and hastes to the protection of his household. His naked sword is raised to strike, but irresolution appears in his eyes. Whether he be astonished or rejoiced, I cannot say. Fortunately, he sees but too clearly that he has come too late to be needed as a preserver. So strange an occurrence demands an interpreter of its high significance, and lo, Tiresias stands in the midst, foretelling the exceeding greatness of the hero. He is full of inspiration, breathing deeply and violently after the manner of soothsayers. His true poetic feeling the artist has brought in night, hovering overhead under a human form as witness of the great event. She bears a torch in her hand to give light, so that even the least of these great beginnings may not pass unnoticed. While we stand lost in wonder at the consideration how the marriage of fact and poesy unites the outward
action with the deepest meaning, we encounter the same subject among the Herculanean antiquities, not indeed treated in so lofty a style, but still of high value. It is simply a family scene, skillfully imagined and symbolized. Here, too, we find Hercules on the ground, but he has not grasped the serpents in so dexterous a manner. He has taken hold too far back, so that they might bite and wound him at will. The animated action of the mother occupies the center of the picture. She is a noble figure, which the ancients loved to repeat at every suitable opportunity. Amphitryon sits upon a throne, the child and the serpents being born in the struggle near to his feet, in the act of rising to draw his sword. He is represented in a wavering posture and action. Opposite to him is the pedagogue. This ancient inmate of the house has taken the second child in his arms to shield him from harm. This picture is accessible to all and extremely valuable, although the weakness of the drawing and treatment points to a higher and more perfect original. A third artist, as Pliny informs us, has risen to the highest point in the treatment of this subject, assembling all Olympus about Jupiter to confirm through all time upon the earth the birth and deed of his mighty son. The ancients, in their artistic works, as we have often occasion to remark, lean to the spiritual idea that nothing demonically great is to be expected without reference both to the higher and the lower. At the birth of Minerva, we say the same thing, and even nowadays, at the birth of a child of high rank, we see all the great and high about the prince invited to be present, to verify, corroborate, and do honor. As an example of the happiness with which the ancients knew how to select the point of interest, and separating it from the surrounding circumstances, represented by itself, I would mention a very small ancient coin of exquisite beauty, the surface of which to the outer edge is completely taken up by the figure of the doughty child in conflict with the serpents. Would that some talented young artist would devote some years of his labors to this subject. We now advance in the life of the hero, and may remark that too much stress has been laid upon his 12 labors, from the natural desire we feel to see a dozen similar objects collected into one circle whenever a certain number of succession is spoken of. We find among the other deeds of the hero actions of equal consequence and more pleasing, undertaken of his own free will or by chance impulse. Fortunately, our gallery offers the fairest examples of this sort. End of section 34.